Let's move to the USA now, and a key piece of inflation data has been released, and it's showing us whether the country's efforts to calm inflation are working, and that of course in turn could indicate if we're heading for global recession. There have also been some very interesting developments around former President Donald Trump in the past few days, and to tell us about all of this I'm joined by our New York correspondent William Denselow. William, thank you so much for chatting to us. So it does look like the efforts to ease inflation are starting to bear fruit. Tell us what the data says, the CPI data, and whether this suggests that the USA and possibly in turn is perhaps a bit more hopeful about staving off a recession.
Well, absolutely. Looking at the Consumer Price Index figures for July, they ticked down They showed that inflation was up 8.5% compared to the year before. Comparing that to the previous month, the month of June, which was up at 9.1%, that shows that these efforts to rise interest rates in a bid to cool these price pressures is perhaps beginning to bear some fruit, as you say. Looking closer at the numbers, well, it's somewhat of a mixed picture. Energy prices are a huge plus as far as those going to the petrol pump are concerned. Energy prices have declined around 4.5%, but looking at things like food prices, they've ticked up another 1.1% for the month of July. Shelter costs, which are incredibly important when it comes to inflation, they ticked up about 0.5%. So it still shows that more still needs to be done. We widely expect the Federal Reserve, the central bank here in the US, to again raise interest rates the next time they convene in September. Now, what does this mean for the global picture? Well, as far as the US is concerned, there are still signs that the economy, while the last two GDP figures for the last 2 quarters have ticked down, which for some prompts indications that the US has fallen into a recession, the labour market still remains incredibly robust. So it seems that there's further wiggle room for the Federal Reserve to go ahead and keep raising those interest rates. From a global scale, well, we expect consumer demand to keep dropping as interest rates continue to rise. But while that might be somewhat of a good news for a global inflation fears, there is the concern that that will then prompt things like the US dollar to get stronger, which of course in of itself has inflation fears as well. So it seems as progress is being made, but it's certainly not a one-stop fix to easing these recession fears globally and these inflation fears globally.
Yeah. Okay, so William, talk to us now about former President Donald Trump. He's been making headlines again this week on a number of scores. So he's been ordered to hand over his tax returns to Congress. Has he indicated if he's going to do that? Tell us about that first.
Well, the latest developments is a huge escalation in a civil investigation that's been going on really since March 2019. Now, this is an investigation here in New York as to whether Donald Trump inflated the value of some of his assets.
Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI. Trump is saying this is all to put him off running for president in 2024. But do we know what the FBI is looking for?
Well, we haven't heard directly from the FBI, but it's being widely reported in the media that this comes down to an investigation that was launched at the start of the year when it came to the National Archives and queries an investigation as to whether the former president might have taken classified documents with him from the White House to his home in Mar-a-Lago. Several months ago, it was believed that around 15 boxes worth of documents were recovered, but an investigation was ongoing. Eric Trump, the former president's son, has stated that that was the reason for this FBI search. So, of course, all questions will be leading to what exactly investigators were looking for, what they potentially found. It's being reported that a couple of boxes were brought out of his Mar-a-Lago home. So it'll be very interesting to see what exactly was believed to warrant such an unprecedented move and search of a former president's abode. And, of course, as you rightly mentioned, the former president says that this is completely politically motivated. He and his allies have said that the Justice Department in the US has now been weaponized, all in a bid to discredit his efforts to potentially run for president in 2 years' time.
My word. Thank you so much for those updates.